inaugural speaker event. I'm Executive Director Leanne Tormey, and it's so wonderful to be together tonight, all gathered because we share something powerful in common, a deep belief that every child deserves the chance to thrive. It's a simple idea, but it's also a radical one, because in this country, and even in our own communities, opportunity is not evenly distributed. In fact, some of the greatest disparity is right here in Fairfield County, where some children have access to all the resources they need, strong schools, enrichment activities, academic support, and confidence-building mentors, while others face barriers at nearly every turn. And that difference, that uneven playing field, is what we call the opportunity gap. Now, I think it's important to say this. The opportunity gap is not a reflection of talent or drive or intelligence. It's not about a child's potential, because every child has potential. The gap is about access to the kinds of experiences that unlock that potential. And it's that very access that makes tonight's subject matter so important to Horizons, because we exist to close that opportunity gap for a lifetime. For those of you who are just becoming familiar and acquainted with us, it was 61 years ago that Horizons was founded by George Stevens, who believed that independent schools could and should serve a public purpose. He began by inviting students from East Harlem to the campus for summer for a program based on academics, enrichment, and swimming from the very start. And more than a half-century later, we welcome nearly 300 students from Norwalk and Stanford to our 6-week summer program each year. Every June, this campus comes alive with something magical. You can hear the laughter echoing from the pool as students learn to swim. You can peek into classrooms where small groups are reading together and see the moment when a story suddenly clicks. You can watch hands-on science experiments, art projects, music presentations, and see a spark of confidence light up a child's face. But what's really special isn't just what happens in the classrooms. It's the relationships that are built. Horizons is a place where students are known, where they're supported, where someone believes in them, and incredible things begin to happen. One of my favorite things about Horizons is that it is a year-round community. Once you're a part of the program, you're part of a family that walks beside you in every season. During the school year, students have access to individualized tutoring and academic enrichment. They participate in social-emotional learning that helps them build resilience, confidence, and communication skills, the very things that helps kids stay engaged and hopeful when life gets hard. As our students grow older, Horizons opens even more doors through college and post-secondary school tours, SAT prep, and career readiness opportunities that expose them to worlds that they never knew existed. Many of our high school students participate in their first employment experience with us as teaching assistants or teaching assistants in training. They learn responsibility, teamwork, and leadership. And the beautiful thing is that Horizons grows with them. Many of them start with us in kindergarten, and they stay through high school and beyond. And by that point, Horizons has become something much deeper than a program. It's a second home. We see it in the way our alumni return as volunteers and as teachers to give back to the very program that helped shape them. We see it in the pride of parents who watch their children graduate from high school, many times the first in their families to go to college. And these are not isolated stories. They are the natural outcome of what happens when a community invests in children with intention and love. And the results speak volumes. Horizons students are more likely to graduate from high school in 4 years, more likely to enroll in college and post-secondary programs, and more likely to see themselves as capable, confident learners and leaders. You see, the impact goes beyond academics. It's about self-belief, and it's about hope. There's something very powerful about a child realizing that the world is bigger than they thought, and that they have a place in it. When a Horizons student visits a college campus for the first time or reads a book that opens up a new way of thinking, that's not just learning, that's transformation. And transformation is contagious. It ripples through families, through schools, and through communities. Closing the gap isn't a single act. It's a sustained promise. It's a belief that equity isn't about giving every child the same thing, but about giving every child what they need to thrive. And that's the heart of Horizons, and that's what's bringing us together tonight. Together, we can make opportunity not a privilege, but a promise. One child, 1 year, one future at a time. And now I have the great pleasure of introducing our speaker, whose work and vision deeply align with Horizons, someone who has dedicated his career to helping educators and communities close the opportunity gap. Dr. Richard Lemons is the Executive Director of Partners for Educational Leadership. He's a Yale professor and a nationally respected leader in school transformation. He's spent decades helping schools and districts reimagine what's possible, building systems that don't just support learning, but that create conditions where every child can flourish. Tonight, he'll be sharing his insights and inspiration in a talk entitled Building an Opportunity-Rich World for Every Child. I can't think of a more fitting topic and a more important conversation for all of us who believe in the power of education to change lives. During Richard's presentation, please feel free to jot down any questions you might have on the index cards at your table. We'll collect them at the completion of his remarks and use them as the basis for our Q&A. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Richard Lemons.
Good evening. It's good to see you all this evening. Let me begin with a story. I'm going to get rid of these pesky paper clips. Jasmine was 11 at the time, 5th grade, fireball of energy, smart, funny, stubborn in the way that stubbornness is really just conviction, but misunderstood. By the time she joined the after-school program at her school, Jasmine had already been labeled disruptive, defiant, by one teacher, just too much. The truth was, Jasmine was hungry for attention, for respect, for a sense that she mattered. Her day had become a series of corrections. Her teachers spent way more time telling her what she should not be doing than what she could be doing, what she should be doing. So every afternoon, she walked down the hallway to this new program, chin high, but her guard a little bit higher, into a space that for once didn't begin with rules. The first day in that program, her mentor, Ms. Rivera, handed her a small journal and said, "Every time you want to shout, write instead. Every time you want to give up, write what you wish would happen instead." Now, Jasmine was 11, and by now she had evolved that great 11-year-old superpower that some of us have seen, and she rolled her eyes. But she took the journal. Over the next few weeks, she began helping the younger kids with the projects that were part of that program. She stayed late to clean the art table. And one day she walks up to Miss Rivera and she says, "I'm not mad all the time anymore, just sometimes." It was a small thing, but it was everything to the teacher. Someone had offered her a space that was structured, but not stifling, challenging, but safe, demanding, but utterly dignifying. That was Jasmine's first taste of what I would call an opportunity-rich experience. Not fancy, not high-tech, just utterly human, full of relationship, relevance, and room to grow. Jasmine's story reminds us that childhood today holds a deep paradox. We have never been more aware of children's developmental needs. We have a body of practice and research that goes back decades. It tells us more about child development than we've ever had in the history of humanity. But at the same time, we're also more exhausted than we've ever been trying to meet their needs. Our kids are both overprotected and undernourished. We padlock the playgrounds for safety, yet we leave them scrolling through the wilds of the internet alone. We schedule every minute of the day and then wonder why they have forgotten to play, how they've forgotten to socialize, how they struggle to interact. Some nights our family calendars feel so exhaustive and busy and strategic that we should somehow qualify for a federal grant. And yet beneath it all, our young people are quietly asking, and sometimes not so quietly, do I matter? Am I more than my grades? Am I more than my social media feed? Am I more than my performance? My name is Richard Lemons. 33 pounds and 33 years ago, I began in education. I started as a high school teacher in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've held many education roles over the last several years, or thus many years. I've been a high school teacher, a middle school teacher, a change coach, a literacy coach in multiple districts. I'm a political scientist by training. I've been in policy think tanks. I've been in civil rights policy work in DC. I've been a college professor. I am the executive director of the nonprofit that was mentioned earlier, Partners for Educational Leadership. But perhaps more importantly, I'm a parent of two people in their late adolescence, 23 and 21, Vivian and Joshua. And their life and my experience desperately trying to do right by them, but probably failing more often than I'm succeeding, is a big part of how I entered this space today, talking about opportunity-rich experiences for young people. My two kids, Vivian and Joshua, are what Jonathan Haidt would call part of the anxious generation in his book. And I think that they've borne the brunt of the rise of technology in a way where we didn't know consciously as adults how to better protect our kids from that technology. I also want to acknowledge that my current teaching, my work in my organization, and as a parent, I'm also a deep believer in thinking about society. And I come into this room tonight as someone who fundamentally believes in my core that the real test of a society is how well it takes care of its young people. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Tonight, I want us to wrestle with a simple but radical question. How do we build an opportunity-rich world, one that allows children to thrive as whole people, not just performers, achievers, consumers? Now, I'm going to pause for a second, because this could be a really abstract conversation. You have journals on the table. Now, these are not just advertising gimmicks. We place these there for substance. I'm going to ask you to find your journal. Pick one that's around you. Grab a pen, open to a page. Doesn't matter. You're not turning this in. No one else is going to see it. This is entirely for you. There are going to be moments where we pause. But this is a really important act. I'm going to ask you to, in your mind, identify a young person that is in your orbit. Maybe it's in your family, maybe in your church or temple, maybe in your classroom, it does not matter, but a young person who matters a lot to you. Now, if you are so lucky to have multiple young people in your life that matter to you, you can list them all, but I would really focus on the ones that, by whatever definition you use, you think are vulnerable. And I want you to write their names down on the sheet of paper and jot a few ideas about why this person or these people, why are you writing them down? And there's no writing police, no one's walking around to police this. But I'm going to ask us to take 2 minutes of pure, beautiful, blissful quiet in a world that is ever cacophonous and chaotic now. Let's give ourselves 2 minutes of silence to think about these young people, what makes them tick, why they matter so much to you, and just jot down some ideas. Okay? Let's just take 2 minutes of quiet to do that. I'll call you back in 2 minutes. Now I'm going to layer another couple questions. So first I was just asking you to identify and think about these amazing young people in your life. Now I want you to think about these 2 questions, and I'm going to give you another couple of minutes. When you think about this person, or maybe these children, where do you see them feeling rich with opportunity? Where in their lives, where in the space of the universe in their lives are they experiencing that richness of opportunity? And also, on the other end of the spectrum, where does it feel as if it's thinner, where their lives are more constrained, a bit more transactional, maybe a little more fragile? And again, just jot ideas. Doesn't have to be in complete sentences, just bullets. Think a little bit about their lives and the various spaces in their lives and what shows up. Now, you didn't know when you registered for this evening that there would be assignments in the middle. You were hoping to come and sit passively, but I'm going to put you to work a little bit. We are going to invoke one of the greatest pedagogical moves ever created for classroom practice. It's very sophisticated, it's very complex, but I believe in you. It is called the think, pair, share. Ooh, okay. So you've done the thinking part. I'm going to ask you to shift in your seat and talk to someone to your left or your right. Ideally, this is pairs. But if there's an odd person at your table, and I don't mean odd in that they're specifically odd, an odd number, we all have one of those at the table. You already know who it is. If there's an odd number of people, make sure no participant is left behind. So you want to be in a pair or triad. But do not do this as a whole table, because what it means is there's less talk time, there's less thinking time. You want to have multiple conversations, except for that table, which only has 3. Everybody else should have at least 2 conversations going on. Important, if we had kindergarten teachers in the classroom right now in our room, they would say, it's really important, they would say, knee to knee. What that means is you literally turn towards each other, not just your neck. Don't be passive. Set your body up for this conversation. You have 2 minutes to talk to your colleague or colleagues about who you wrote about and what you're thinking, what you wrote down. Go ahead. One more minute. One more minute. Thirty seconds. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I just saw in the room. I saw smiles. I saw the physical manifestation of energy. I saw people leaning into each other with interest and compassion. Now, I have hypotheses. I think one of them is just a pedagogical one, that people are more engaged when they're actually doing the work. They're talking, thinking with each other than sitting passively listening to someone from the outside. but I also think it suggests something about the people who are in the room and how much you care about the people that you wrote down. The reason I wanted to start there and with Jasmine is I think we have to put a face on this conversation to make it real for us as human beings. Now, I'm going to share some data in a very short order, but as we do that and we have this conversation, I want you to be thinking about your specific person, the people who care a lot about you, so that these are not disembodied data points from the Center for Disease Control or from clinical trial experiments that we have access to. So let's transition back. Truth is that our children live at an intersection of extraordinary possibility and unprecedented pressure. It's that old opening, one of the greatest openings ever in a book. It's the best of times, it was the worst of times. Understanding that tension, I think, is part of the first step for us changing it for kids. So let's widen the view from Jasmine's story to a broader story about childhood today and what's happening. I want to start with a panoramic view in numbers. The numbers you see on the screen I'll talk about, but they're disconnected, but I'm going to give you a sense. I don't suggest that you write all these down. Just drink them in. Think about what they mean. Think about the face of the child that you wrote down and whether these relate. 40% of high school students reported in a recent survey persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness in the past school year. 40%. Only 50% of adolescents report feeling close to anyone at school, child or adult or peer. 1 in 5 adolescents has a diagnosed mental or behavioral health condition. 40% of adolescents aged 12 to 17 report persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. 20% of those same youth reported seriously considering attempting suicide in the last year. Nearly 1 in 5 children ages 3 to 17 have been diagnosed with a mental, emotional, behavioral health condition, with the prevalence increasing over time. The older you get, the more likely you are. 1 in 4 preschool children have experienced significant or emotional or behavioral challenges like anxiety, aggression, withdrawal, trouble focusing since the COVID pandemic. 95% of teens have a smartphone. 46% of those report being online, quote, almost constantly, unquote. 50.4% had 4 or more hours of daily screen time on average, self-reported. We can guess that those numbers are low in the self-reporting. And that's in non-school use. For adolescent girls, passive social media use, kind of sitting and the term, the coin of the realm is doom scrolling right now. Have high associations with depressed mood. One longitudinal study suggests that passive social media and technology use predicts depressive symptoms 7 months in advance of when they drop in. These are daunting numbers. They're alarming. And underneath them is a reality that these statistics don't land equally across our society. For some of these data points, they land heavily on girls. For some of these, they land more heavily on boys. For some of these, they land more heavily for students of color, for some for students of poverty, and for some in the LGBTQ plus community. These are troubling findings, but they land inequity, and the tax of this burden lands heavily in particular communities. So our children are living in a paradox, endlessly connected and profoundly alone. And then there's pace, the pace of life in 2025. Many of our kids live on conveyor belts of expectations: wake, perform, produce, repeat. If you talk to parents, they'll tell you about 14-hour days of drop-offs, practices, homework, travel teams. Oh, travel teams. It's almost as if in 2025, being busy is a badge of reward or courage or honor. When did exhaustion become a childhood virtue, as I'm wondering about? Yet amid that noise, many children tell us, and we have a lot of data around this, that they crave exactly what adults crave: peace, belonging, laughter, time to be. So let's talk a little bit about what we know about the conditions that help students thrive. Not just students, young people thrive. And they're not surprising. None of this is going to just knock you out of your chair. I've talked about this with people, and you're going to nod. 5, I would boil these down to 5. You can cluster these in other categories. First, warm, responsive relationships. Neuroscientists have an expression called serve and return. It borrows from the tennis analogy. And the idea is, as children are developing, there are these moments where maybe a baby is gurgling, or maybe there's something, and does a warm, compassionate other respond? Do they return the volley back across the net? And it's these moments of exchange with someone who cares about them matter quite a bit at a fundamentally biologic level. These opportunities for serve and return with a caring adult, noticing, responding, staying engaged, actually wires the brain for trust and engagement so that the child can develop. And without that reciprocity, stress builds up, lack of trust, and resilience, and with it, resilience blooms. Second big category is play and joy. American Academy of Pediatrics remind us that play is not a luxury. They call it's the laboratory of childhood. It's where children learn to imagine, negotiate, recover from disappointment. When we cut recess, when we lose playtime, we lose a daily masterclass in developing empathy and creativity. Safety and stability, another big category. Students benefit from predictable routines, emotional consistency, and freedom of chronic stress. That's the soil of development and growth. The CDC, Center for Disease Control, has an Essentials for Childhood framework. And they say that safe, stable, nurturing environments are critical for childhood development, while volatility, irregularity are drags on healthy development. They're resistance at best, and they're trauma that gets encoded biologically at worst. Voice and agency matters. There's a body of theory called self-determination theory. This is all humans need competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And children, not just adults, children grow strong when we let them make real decisions, take real risks, feel that their ideas matter in the presence of people they care about and who love them. Identity and belonging is the fifth construct here. The Search Institute, which does quite a bit of work on developmental relationships, their research is showing that feeling seen and valued within a community, and that community can be a family, it can be a faith community, it can be a broader community, it can be a school, it can be a classroom, is as protective as nutrition and health. And we all know, and sleep. We know how important eating right and getting sleep is biologically. And the Search Institute's research suggests that the experience of feeling seen and understood is just as important. When a child hears, "I see you and you matter," the nervous system calms itself. Now, I suspect most of us don't need sophisticated research to tell us about some of those ideas. We kind of get that intuitively. And we also know about how damaging and heartbreaking the opposite of those things can be in the lives of kids, also the lives of adults. I also want to talk a little bit about why varied experiences matter. So it's not just about having these moments, it's also about having kind of a plethora, a myriad of such experiences. Beyond relationships, children also need rich, varied experiences that stretch who they think they are. The evidence here is rather striking also. Large international study of 15-year-olds found that students who participated in both sports and the arts scored significantly higher on collaboration, self-control, and open-mindedness scores than their peers. Meta-analysis of extracurricular participation showed consistent academic and social benefits, particularly from students from under-resourced communities. U.S. Census reports show us that children active in organized activities show higher self-esteem, lower rates of risky behavior, and stronger connections to school. It's something I want to underscore here. It's not just about more activities, because I think in some ways that's been part of the trap of America in the last decade. It's about meaningful activities. Quality trumps quantity here. A robotics club can be life-changing when a student like Ahmed, age 13, finds mentors who treat him like a builder instead of a bystander. Summer job can be transformational when a young person like Tasha gets feedback that suggests to her, we value your mind, your presence, not just your labor. When these moments happen, a new story, a self-story emerges. I belong, I'm capable, I can contribute. When that story gets written, it's hard to erase. I often describe this as the difference between pouring water on concrete and watering a garden. Concrete shields the gift. Garden absorbs it, transforms it, grows it into life. Our task, collectively, not individually, is to make the soil of childhood fertile again. So here we are, surrounded by compelling data. But there's one thing I've learned in the last 30 or so years, and it's that stories move people more than data points. Faces move people more than analytic reasoning and lots of compelling argument. And so I think we need to have some storytelling in this. Now again, if you were hoping that you were going to come into this evening and you were going to sit passively, kind of hide in the back of the room after eating brie and roasted mushrooms, let me disappoint you again. I understand that instinct. I have grown the strategies and developed them, honed them well, of how to kind of hide and disappear in the back of a room. It's the same strategies that my high school students sometimes did. Lower my head, never make direct eye contact, pretend you're not there. The reality is, and I hope you've picked this up, that one of the through lines of tonight's conversation is about connection. I don't think we can figure out how to reimagine childhood for kids without connection among us, not just with the kids. So, because I believe relationships matter, and they're not just extras, because they're fundamental parts of the human developmental operating system, we're going to have some conversation about redesigning childhood, and I want it to come from your experiences. So, I'll make some suggestions first. You're going to engage in some whole table conversations. You're going to expand exponentially beyond your pair share and your triad share to whole group. But there are certain patterns that just emerge in default conversations among adults when they're having these kind of conversations. And I'm just going to give you a few simple suggestions to kind of arrest some of those. One, listen to understand. We're not having a debate here. Your job is to understand the other voices around the table. You're not waiting for them to stop so that you can join in, or waiting or listening carefully for the flaw in their argument so that you can correct them. That's not what this is about tonight. This is about dialogue. Share the air. If you are a comfortable external processor of your thinking and you go immediately into talking in the first 5 seconds, keep reminding yourself you need to pause at some point to let the other people at the table be a part of the dialogue, because it's a monologue if you're the only person talking. So share the air. Articulate your idea. So the other side of seeking to understand other people's perspective is try to be as clear as you can about your thinking. Try to articulate. You're not trying to win a debate. You're just trying to share your thinking. And lastly, let's protect dignity. Assume best intent. Extend grace. Be warm in receiving the thoughts of your colleagues and your friends around the table and people you're just now meeting for the first time. So I am going to go back to this. So what I want you to do at your tables is to have a conversation around where you see young people thriving today and what worries you about the world that we're giving our kids to. Now, what I don't mean in that last question is I don't want us to get lost in an existential conversation about global warming and how the world's all falling apart politically. I'm more thinking about the issues that children are dealing with on a micro level. So I just want to be really clear about the framing of that so we don't get way too off. I'm going to ask your table to have a 10-minute conversation about this and to keep thinking about listen to understand, articulate, share the space, and preserve the dignity of everyone around the table. I have confidence in you as a group. I think you've got this. When you see a hand go up in the air in 10 minutes, your job, if you see it, is to raise your hand so that hopefully, eventually, everybody's got their hand up because everybody sees it and everybody realizes it's time to transition back. So you've got 10 minutes. Have a conversation. Wow, you're great. You're quick learners. You figured that out. I didn't have to bring out my old camp counseling tricks like if I clap, hear my, clap once if you can hear my voice. All those old tricks. The hands did it. I want to bring us back into the last few minutes to talk about kind of moving forward and some possibilities for us. And I fought to have this event ending at midnight, so we had ample time to have this conversation. I was discouraged from a midnight ending tonight, so we're going to try to get into a Q&A in the next few minutes. But I do want to leave with a few ideas, some design principles a little bit, and some stories. So I'm going to go back to some of the names that I've mentioned earlier, and these are real students who come out of literature and case studies documenting programs that go on around the United States that are making a big difference. Sophia was 12 when she joined El Sistema, the Venezuelan youth orchestra movement that's now spread across the world. Her home neighborhood was crowded, loud, sometimes unsafe. But in rehearsal, surrounded by violins and brass, she discovered order and beauty. The discipline of practice gave her focus. The ensemble gave her a sense of belonging. Today she teaches younger children, passing on that love of music and possibility. Maria, a 10-year-old who joined Girls on the Run, some of you might know about that program. At first she hated running, and that's what any sane person should believe about running. Your muscles argue with you as you're doing it. It just seems wrong. But every week she met with the coach, small circle of her female peers, and they talked about confidence, kindness, perseverance. And by the final 5K, Maria finished the finish line with a grin and said, "I didn't think I could do this. Now I know I can do hard things." It's agency stitched together with practice and sweat and friendship and reflection. And then there's Ahmed, the middle schooler who joined the robotics club that we mentioned earlier in his Title I school. He'd never been called an engineer before. But the first time his small robot zipped across the classroom floor, a teacher said, "Ahmad, you built that." And later he told her, "I think I'm going to fix things when I grow up. Maybe people, not just machines." These stories remind us the ingredients of thriving aren't mysterious. 3 design principles for an opportunity-rich world that I want to kind of leave you with. They're drawn from research and practice, and they're lived in very ordinary moments, and that gives me a lot of hope. Design for relationships. When we're thinking about creating opportunities for young people, at the center of those experiences, programs, institutes, initiatives, should be a real attention to relationship. Every child needs a go-to adult. Someone who sees them completely, not conditionally. Harvard Center on the Developing Child calls it serve and return, which I mentioned earlier. Search Institute calls it developmental relationships. You and I might just call it showing up. Ask yourself, does every young person in your orbit have at least one adult who's checking in, listening, and staying? If not, that's where it can begin. Multiply rich experiences. We cannot predict which moment is going to be the catalyst of changing a life, but we can increase the odds. The arts, sports, volunteering, nature, part-time work, all can add a tile to a mosaic. The trick is not just more programs, it's more access to the quality programs we have. We have to broaden access and maintain quality. An after-school chess club is wonderful. Youth garden can be wonderful. Makerspace, choir, community mural. What's important in those experiences is there's choice, challenge, connection. Sometimes they can be really simple moments. A grandparent who teaches a child to cook, a coach who ends practice by asking, "What did you learn about yourself today?" A teacher who lets students lead morning meetings once a week. don't really even need a grant for that. We just need intentionality. We live in a culture that worships a full calendar. It's very much a part of modern 2025 life. We have color-coded calendars and we've color-coded ourselves into boxes. And kids are experiencing that color coding. Growth requires rest. Developmental psychology, biological evidence suggests that stress needs recovery time. And it's in the recovery time that some of the greatest gains, the greatest development. So we need to make sure we're also providing our students rest, recovery, reflection for our children, but I would dare say for us, so that we can be at our best to take care of them. An opportunity-rich world includes Sabbath moments, times of nature, unstructured play, laughter without agenda. If a child's life is an ecosystem, then stillness is the rain that makes everything grow. So where do we go from here? If you're a parent, consider this week how you might trade one scheduled activity for one evening of shared curiosity with your children. A walk. Leaf peeping. I hear that's a thing in New England this time of year. A board game. A kitchen experiment. If you're an educator, audit your schedule. Does every child in your orbit have a chance to lead, to create, and even to rest? If you're a community member, think about how your institution, your church, your library, your business, your nonprofit might open a door for one more child to belong. Opportunity isn't a program always. It's a posture. It's 1,000 small decisions to make room for another human being's growth. So glad to be with you tonight, and we're going to try to answer some questions. So thank you for having me.
So if anyone has questions that you've written on your cards, maybe you can hold them up and some of the staff members that are in the room can come around to collect them. But we have some questions to get us started. And one of them, Richard, is can you speak to the value or importance of the out-of-school time to leveling the opportunity gap for young people?
I think it's essential. It might be our last frontier that's kind of still open for childhood. You just think about it. That moment from 3 to 6 every afternoon, that's a little less structured for a lot of kids. Some kids have some opportunities there. The school day's kind of chock full, 7:30 to 2:30, 2:45, 3, 3:15, depending on the end time. Pretty intense. But these moments in the afternoon and the weekend and the summers, I think, can be laboratories of growth. And quality really matters a lot in that. We've gone through some, I think, of the design principles that the research points us to. They need that serve and return philosophy. There need to be adults who care a lot about them and are going to stay engaged with them and are going to have that affective, positive, and intellectual give and take. They need voice, agency, belonging. I think those are real antidotes to isolation. And multiple rich experiences. And what's the alternative, right? Hours and hours online and in isolation. Rising levels of depression. I think that we have real choices here in the extra programming we could provide, but it's also essential that we think about the quality of that programming. And I am here at the behest of Horizons, but I think it's worth noting here is a program with decades of experience of trying to provide rich, powerful relationships, connections, stimulation, helping people feel seen and understood. I think this is the kind of ideal kind of experience that we ought to be providing more and more and more children across the United States.
Thank you. Here's another question. How might we as a society support families and children who are worried about their next meal, then their home and their safety?
This is huge. I think the higher the levels of family instability and vulnerability, the higher the levels of internalized stress and sometimes trauma that students experience. So if we care about children, then we need to start caring about family units, whatever those family units look like. And I think it warrants a grand conversation across our society, and not one that's being held across yelling politicians who are screaming at each other from a blue or red perspective. I think we need a grand conversation about, do we as a society really care about all kids? And do we care about the families who are nurturing all kids? And that might mean really important conversations about fundamental building blocks of safety, security, food security, and how to take care of. I don't have simple answers for this, but I think if we hide from these questions and we don't figure out a way as a society to ask ourselves, who do we want to be as a culture, as a civilization, and put in the front of that, how are we taking care of young people? I think we're going to look up a few decades later, and we have lost more ground, and there will be a whole lot of people who have paid the cost of us not paying intentional attention starting now.
Richard, do you have any thoughts on the potential for AI to be involved in this conversation?
Oh, you know, I bet we could do an experiment right now. Like we could pull up ChatGPT on my laptop and say, ChatGPT, what is AI's role in this topic? And it would produce rather sophisticated stuff. I think we're in the beginnings of a technological revolution that is going to be seismic, that we don't yet even have a sense. 3 years ago, English teachers across America panicked because ChatGPT was released, and suddenly we were worried that 10th graders would cheat on their 5-paragraph theme because they would ask AI bot to do it. If that was our only worry, I would love to go back to 3 years ago. I just think that I'm not a futurist. What I would say is AI has grand potential as a tool to support enterprise, to support learning. It also has grand power as a disruptor, and not all disruption is good. We could be facing lots of unemployment in the future because jobs go away, the humans do. What's the impact on families? What's the impact on kids going to be? I think there are real issues, and I think the forces driving AI to penetrate every moment of the day are forces that are benefiting financially. They're not asking the questions of what's the impact on kids. They're asking the question, what's the bottom line on the money in our company for this fiscal year? And I think that and we as a society need, again, to have the grand conversation of what's the impact, what are the data on our kids, and what are the worries. And let's not wait 20 years to figure out what the worries are as they play out. Let's start having serious conversations about them right now.
And I think we have time for one more question, and that's, do you have any advice on balancing structure and allowing plenty of room for self-discovery and exploration?
That's a great question. Because what we know about kids is they need both of those, right? An environment for kids absent structure is chaos. Chaos is not a fuel for fertile soil. It actually gets in the way of development. But we also know, and the evidence is kind of compelling now, and we haven't been talking about it for the last couple of years, that with books like The Anxious Generation, we're kind of thinking about what's the impact of the hyper helicopter parenting that some of us have been doing for the last decade, and the rise of technology, and those two things hitting each other in a powerful way. And that research seems to suggest that there's some real benefits from letting kids just go do and be and go bike around for 2 hours with friends and negotiate relationships and learn how to be each other and not have it mediated by the powerful forces of social media and other forms of technology. I also think that they're not one or the other. There are ways to build productive structure and within that structure have moments of self-discovery, moments of reflection, moments of opportunity to ponder. I know that it is a somewhat precious space, but I teach every Wednesday night at Harvard from 7 to 9. And I would dare say my classrooms are organized purposefully to have some kind of structure and a lot of space that is the students to figure things out in real time with each other, to learn how to work as not just students, but as a little mini organization that is a case study that's part of the learning process. And I think we figured out you can kind of do both. It's not one or the other. There's a way to kind of split the middle thoughtfully.
Richard, I lied. There's another question.
Uh-oh.
How do you reach and get through to students who are numb from social media and can't connect to the people in front of them?
Again, I think that it's hard to have a blanket answer. I think we are with some students that there's actually there's clinical intervention that is needed. Like we need experts. We need to work with therapists and doctors. So that's at the individual micro level. I think one thing we need to figure out as a society, and I've been ambivalent about phones in schools because I actually see them as tools that can enhance schooling. But what I've also seen in the states that have made policies that were statewide or districts that made policies district-wide is they've taken the battle between individual adults and groups of students away. Like, we're just not doing phones here. We have a policy. All we're going to do is enforce it. It's mandated. So we're not negotiating this anymore. And the absence of the negotiation has made it easier to create some phone-free spaces. And early evidence, anecdotal as it is, the most states that have gone online with these policies, it's still early. But anecdotal things I hear from superintendents who are just going online with some of these policies in states where this has been mandated is that students are even reporting that they are able to focus better in class, that they're able to foster relationships with their colleagues. They're not constantly itching to grab their phone and pull it out because they can't. So their brain shuts off that itch and allows them to be present. And so what I draw from that experience is sometimes we might need to create, as a collective, we might need to create some standard operating procedures and policies and ideas so that it's not parent by parent, family by family, classroom by classroom trying to sort this out. That we agree as somewhat of a society, not draconian and everybody has to do the same thing, but we all agree actually some of this stuff is really negative for all kids and that we as adults need to figure that out and sort it out to protect them. And again, that's a flip it 10,000 feet in the air because I think it's a real issue and I think each issue is a little different and each child might be very different. And some of these things are at some places so extreme that there really needs to be a clinical intervention with professionals.
All right. Thank you, Richard. I'm Lee Kennedy, and I'm Horizons Board Chair. I'll make a few quick closing remarks. A huge thank you to Richard for this inspiring and engaging presentation. We're referring to this as our inaugural speaker presentation, and after tonight's wonderful experience, I truly hope it will be the first of many equally thought-provoking events to come. A big thank you to the staff of Horizons and NCCS for helping to bring this event together. Also to our development team for their brainstorming. Last but not least, thank you all for coming out this evening. We're truly, whether you're longstanding board members or new to Horizons, we're very grateful to have you here. Please bring home Horizons at a Glance brochure that's on the table if you don't have one, as well as the bookmarks. And we hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much.